Greetings, dear friends. The operational situation at the front by the end of the 2nd of March. Today, we will talk in more detail about the Bakhmut and Avdeevka directions, as well as about the news background. Well, let's start with Bakhmutsky, with Ivanovsky. Heavy fighting and assault operations continue. According to recent reports, Russian troops are pulling up additional forces that were previously concentrated in the city of Bakhmut. Accordingly, they are transferred to Ivanovskoye itself, and they carry out assault operations in several directions at once. It should also be added that the pressure from their side has really intensified, because now we will not only speak for Ivanovo itself. They are trying to move west of the Chernobyl Garden Association, but not just in the direction of Ivanovo. As we said on yesterday's evening broadcast, they will also strike from the south. But today they have already stated on the previous one that hit. There is still an attempt to move along the road section in the direction of the Ivanovo forest. At the same time, of course, these may be attacks of a distracting nature, but in any case they exist. And based on the statements that exist today, the enemy attacks with large forces. In other words, today, we are not talking about small infantry groups, small assault groups, no. Today, we have a slightly different situation. Not today specifically, the last one especially. 48 hours in the Ivanovsky district. It means that we have added a bit of a gray zone somewhere, as you noticed, because the situation is still being clarified. As for the red zone, they haven't added it yet, so I didn't output it separately. Well, let's take it in order. So, it's probably fair to say that we have the heaviest battles now along Kirov Street. Here the goal of the Russian troops is very clear, to reach the section of the road T0504. In other words, it is just the same to reach it approximately to this area, because there is also some activity of Russian troops to the north, which will allow them to bypass a number of positions, and combine their forces that were previously in the Popovsky Tract and Kromov. Concentrated there. Again, we then stated that one assault group from the Vyanovka fortified area attacked the Valyanovsky nursery in the direction of the Popovsky forest, the other from Kromov. They connected, increased the pressure accordingly. Well, we see what we see today. And as if these forces are now just the same aimed at reaching the northern near approaches to Ivanovsko. But it will be possible if they have further progress. Rather, not the advance, but the Russian troops will be able to gain a foothold along Kirov Street. Because today it is impossible to say about any stabilization, or even conditional stabilization, because as it is, there are a lot of plus for different ones, and here, as you can see, there are a lot of houses. Separate groups run into different houses somewhere within the gray zone, and accordingly there are fights. Therefore, the situation remains for further clarification. But now the big bet is just along Kirov Street, and the enemy is placing more emphasis on it. The number of artillery strikes has increased significantly. The number of air bomb attacks has increased. Today, I posted a video in my Telegram. It was originally published on the Russian resource, Shelling of the City of Chaz Yar. The video is signed that it is from an enemy drone. But the first thing is that the building of Avdeevka, that is, the Chemist microdistrict, the 9th quarter, is destroyed at one time. So that it is unsuitable, this building has been started to conduct hostilities on the part of the enemy. This is the first moment. The second point for understanding Russian drones, so that you understand how difficult it is to work. They circled over the city of Ours Yar. That is, you understand that at this entire distance, of course, the enemy conducts his aerial reconnaissance as much as possible. This creates a lot of difficulties today, because it is quite effective for them. We are also effective, but the amount of artillery and tactical aviation is on the side of Russia's superiority. This is the situation we have in Ivanovo. I repeat, the situation remains under further clarification, because there are intense hostilities. We turn to the Avdeevka direction. Verdict. There were several attempts made by the Russian troops to advance again and again from the type area. Moreover, an unsuccessful insider and a number of Telegram channels published videos today. Again, the situation is exactly the same as we said yesterday. Without fire support, without means of fire destruction, there was a landing by Russian troops and absolutely everyone was destroyed. There's less than a minute of video lasted, the scariest shots, but actually as it is. It's very surprising sometimes, you watch what is published, but really failed offensive actions. And sometimes you look at this kind of promotion Ivanovskoye, again Bakhmut, Bogdanovka under Bakhmut and so on, where Avdeevka was, respectively. And somehow it's hard to perceive that this is the same army when it makes such mistakes, but at the same time, it has serious successes. Therefore, what is? Many people wonder that these attacks could have been distracting, or during the work of aerial reconnaissance. They were sent just so to say to identify the positions of the APU, but there was too large a group there, so no, it is excluded. This was exactly a failed attempt of the assault. Therefore, we do not record any serious changes in the area of the Burdik settlement. We have the greatest activity in approximately this area. Everything south of the beam and along South Street, including the T-shaped intersection. As for Orlovka, there was also a number of news today, but on the previous broadcast, we analyzed drone footage. We had them from the eastern part. By the evening, we are again analyzing the latest drone footage that has been published. Well, actually, we do not record any changes in Orlovka. But at the same time, I will add that there is a gray zone, there are battles going on in it, but the APU does not allow Russian troops to gain a foothold. This information appeared to us closer to the evening, by about 6 in the evening on the situation, on the locality. Although the pressure does not decrease here, you also need to remember this. We had some activity even south of the Eagles. Cinema was more positional and distracting. Now we turn to the thin one. A video has appeared today, and unfortunately, it is already reliable. Yes, indeed, the Russian troops managed to enter the settlement, managed to take most of it under control. But we're going to talk about this in more detail now. So here, on a site up to 1 kilometer wide, they advanced to a depth of up to 700 meters. Well, of course, they planted a flag. Based on how it was, their flag was hoisted. That is, they walked at full height. Naturally, on this basis, the overall situation has already been adjusted in a subtle way. Well, by the end of the day it looks like this. What should I add here? Firstly, the fact that the enemy reports that he does not control the entire settlement to the end, but a sweep is underway. Therefore, we actually also noted on the basis of drone footage that we have, but there is no official information in the western part, or that they have managed to reach their limits yet. But let's just say, it was a matter of time in fact, because here from the Swallow area, they pressed. There were a number of attacks from the north, plus from the north, and the water they pressed in the north direction, northwest. As if it were necessary to understand here that it is not the most advantageous location near the settlement. Therefore, the result is clear. Now, they will move naturally to the farms and to the garden association, which is already located north of the river. At the same time, we have a fairly large area of open fields. Whether Russian troops will go in this direction, we will see, because now the vector is looming more. This is exactly the same increase in pressure on Orlovka, Burdik, an attempt to bypass, because there is activity. It was necessary to say about it right away, by the way, northeast of the settlement of Burdik, which means in the area of the railway. This activity is now positional on the part of the Russian troops, but they will still increase the pressure. Most likely, an attempt will be made, well, let's say conditionally, between the settlement of Burdik and Novobakhmutovka, to move westward along the forest belts and fields. For today, we only state that there is some positional activity. Difficult situation, but as if the enemy is now making a very big bet on this section of the front. According to reports from the field from our fighters, even in the afternoon after lunch, they reported that, in principle, active assault actions by Russian troops are now being observed throughout the Avdeevka sector of the front. In some places, I repeat, they have the positional character of the southern Orlovka, in the direction of the Garden Partnership. In some places they are distracting, but still the forces that the Russian troops have, which they use, they are quite large, which now allows them to operate between the sections of the front. Therefore, we will wait for further information in a thin way, but everything is already clear here. Plus, an unfavorable location. At the same time, it is also necessary to add Pervomeyskaya-Nevelskaya along the Avdeevsky section of the front. There has also been talk about them in recent days. Why? Because there is activity of Russian troops so far, although we also said that certain forces have been concentrated for assaults. Suitable in number, that is, there are about a few over dozens there now, from 70 to 90. But these are conditional figures that were announced about a week and a half ago. That is, it seems to be a little, it seems to be not a little, taking into account what forces are attacking, carrying out assault actions, especially Nevelskaya. But now they are using small forces, that is, there are about 5 to 12 to 15 people in the reconnaissance of the battle, in the direction of Nevelsky. But in any case, they are preparing to increase the pressure, because artillery strikes are now intensifying in this area. And we are not only talking about Nevelskaya, not only about Pervomeyski, we are talking about this area in general, because there are also attempts to advance along the beam. It is possible to stop, but in general, the enemy, based on the information that has been available recently, is aimed at increasing pressure here as well. Well, or in simple words, align the front line along Nevelsky. That is, the May Day advance along Nevelsky, as we had it near Avdeevka itself. That's the situation. As for the Kurikovsky direction, today I will say such twofold information is received, it causes twofold feelings. So the first one is Krasnogorovka. There were reports from our side that it was completely possible to dislodge the Russian troops, while no new personnel were received from the Russian side, while personnel were received from the 3rd Assault Brigade. Today, I looked at the information given by reputable Russian military officers. They actually report that the fighting in the south continues, but there are no videos. This reminds me of the situation, by the way, it has been worked out, where it is already clear from the personnel, even from their drones, that the APU controls the southern fortified areas that are south of the work on this one. There is information from military enlistment officers that fighting is allegedly going on somewhere in the south. Therefore, this kind of information. We have voiced it for show, but we are going to what is really happening now. So, according to Georgievka, we will state here that the enemy is again taking further assault actions, does not abandon attempts to advance in the northeastern part, that is, what is north of the Georgievka rate. This is one time. The second point, attacks not only on Georgievka itself. There were a number of attacks carried out by Russian troops also in an open field, that is, an attempt to bypass a number of positions of the armed forces of Ukraine, which are located somewhere in open fields, was undertaken with the support of armored vehicles. It was possible to repel. But in general, we see that pressure is now increasing on Georgievka itself, and most likely in the near future, they will continue assault operations, given the fact that they managed to advance along the Harvest Garden Association, and again approach, but already to the southeastern outskirts. The fact that we have a central chicken on the southwestern outskirts of Georgievsky Stavka, that is Georgievki. And of course, they will attempt further assault actions, because larger forces will already be involved on their part here, and plus, they have the opportunity to carry out actions of a distracting nature, not only north of the Georgievsky headquarters, but also approximately in this area. The main goal was for them, and remains, an abandoned field reservoir. There is a greater emphasis on him, and the vectors are so everything goes to him, but so far it's all positional, as in the victory area. Here, most likely, rotation will take place now, after which there will be activity. But we will talk about this a little later, when it all happens. Novomykhailovka also received news today that further attempts are being made to attack Russian troops in the south, to carry out assault operations. This is also Timoryazov Street, and further north, in the direction, let's say conditionally, of the central street within the gray zone. There were a number of attacks from the industrial zone. We do not record any significant changes, but our fights remain within the gray zone. The situation is also quite tense, to put it mildly, because the enemy is increasing pressure here.